Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Science Fiction Prototyping Podcast. I am Brian David Johnson, the author of the Science Fiction Prototyping column in the IEEE Computer Magazine. And this is the podcast where we go a little bit deeper into the content from the columns and talk to different people about science fiction prototyping and the process, and really what a lot of people are now doing as they begin to pick up the science fiction prototyping approach to using science fiction based on science fact to prototype possible technologies and possible futures that might be out there. Now, for this month's column, I wanted to switch it up a little bit and actually bring on a guest that we should have had on a long time ago. This month's column in the November issue of the IEEE magazine is about building robots with capes. It's a project that we did around the 21st Century Robot Project with Jimmy, where we started going and working with young kids. We started working with these amazing young students from MS233 in the Bronx. And the entire 21st Century Robot team got together and worked with these kids to take their designs and take their ideas and bring them into reality. Not only the look of them, but also the apps and what the robots would actually do. Really, it was a fulfillment of the promise and fulfillment of the dream of the 21st Century Robot Project. And for those who have been following the column and following the 21st Century Robot Project will know that my creative partner on this project is an illustrator and a creative by the name of Sandy Winkleman. And Sandy and I have been working together really for the past decade or more, working on the Dr. Simon Egerton stories about Jimmy and about the robots, and where I do the text and come up with the stories. Sandy is really the brains behind the characters and the brains behind the illustrations. He is the one who came up with the initial drawings of Jimmy the robot and of all the other robots in the universe of the world of the 21st Century Robot project. So I really should have brought him on to the podcast a long time ago, but we finally got him on today, where we sat down and we had a little conversation about just science fiction prototyping in general, and also the project of what it was like to work with these young students from MS233. So let's have a listen to him, and then I'll be back. Hello, Sandy Winkleman, and welcome to the Science Fiction Prototyping Podcast.
Hello.
So, Sandy, you and I have been working on these science fiction prototypes for, over 10 years now. And very specifically, we've been working on the stories about Dr. Simon Egerton and Jimmy and all of the robots. And you've been an integral part of the process. And we've written about this process in the science fiction prototyping department and in the column for several years now. And so people have been kind of following our progress with Jimmy and the robots and where we've gone with it. But the first question I wanted to ask you, I wanted to kind of take you back and say, really just in general, what has it been like working on these science fiction prototypes for so many years?
It's actually been quite surreal. I mean, starting from the beginning and just in my backyard, just hanging out and talking about robots and figuring out that we could actually do something with this, and actually have. It's kind of mind-blowing. Truly living the dream of creating robots for science fiction and actually seeing them come to life is just, it's unreal.
So how has that affected, though, your design? So as you've been working really closely with roboticists, we've worked really closely with 3D designers. We've been really fortunate to work with a lot of different professionals. How do you think that's affected you? I mean, you're the primary illustrator, right? You're the one who's coming up with all of these characters. How has that changed your style and how you even think about creating these robots?
Well, to be honest, it's not much different than my usual job of just being a graphic designer. I'm always required to work around certain structures. And with robots, especially the past few that we've been doing, we're working with some type of endoskeleton that I have to design a 3D design around. And there are limitations of mobility and structure. And although it's frustrating at times, it's a real challenge, and I do strive on the challenge of trying to make something good out of something that, at first glance, is kind of crappy to work within. But I mean, I look forward to the future of it because it's just going to get easier and better.
Well, and that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about as well. So I know you and I feel that we were very, very fortunate earlier this year to work with the 3 students from MS233 and to kind of really take the dream of the 21st Century Robot Project of getting as many people designing, imagining, building, and programming robots. And so being able to work with these young minds and these young students was truly a really fantastic process. What was it like for you, kind of being the character designer, having done this now for 10 years, to actually now go and partner up and work with these young students? What was that like?
I was actually really nervous about the whole thing. To be honest, like creating designs of robots for adults is fairly simple. Most adults get pretty excited, but then having like kids and their imagination coming up with what they wanted and then having to deliver close to what they are expecting, I had no idea whether I was going to hit the target anywhere close. I remember about myself being a child, just my imagination, and then putting myself in these kids' place and then thinking about what could end up being. It was really nerve-wracking, but I was really satisfied when I visited the kids and talked to them and saw how excited they were about all the designs and how everything turned out. It was really exciting to meet up with these kids and talk to them and talk about, did I get this right? Did I get this right? Does this look good? Was I seeing the right thing in your drawing and your explanation? And most of them were like, yeah, in fact, you went way beyond what I was expecting. So it was really rewarding.
So where do you see things going, Sandy? So we've been doing this now for some time, and that this notion of science fiction prototyping, using science fiction stories based on science fact to prototype the future. The thing that's been really wonderful about the 21st Century Robot Project and Jimmy specifically is, you and I have done this work together for so long, and now we have walking, talking robots, and not just walking, talking Jimmys, but lots of robots. I mean, robots like Ritzbits and Kaleem and Jason and, any number of robots that'll be kind of coming in the future. What do you hope from this process? Not only the 21st Century Robot Project, but also just the idea of being able to use your imagination to develop technologies, to develop possible futures, and then to be able to actually make them happen. Where do you hope things go?
That's a great question. I mean, it obviously can go in a lot of different directions, and getting the kids involved from the beginning and having these young minds participate is just, it could go anywhere. But, I mean, obviously there's, like, avenues of, like, healthcare and elderly care, which could be interesting. But then also, like I was getting back to earlier about, like, having to design around a structure of, like, an endoskeleton. That's, in the future, is going to disappear to where the design can actually maybe lead how these robots look as opposed to the technology. So, I mean, it could go anywhere, and I really want it to be more just get to the point where it's like these kids can easily make robots that are just personal. Like anybody could make their own personal robot to do whatever they wanted to do and to look however they wanted to look. I don't know. It's great. It's a great place to be right now, and I leave it up more to the people and the open source part of it to really let people take it further than anywhere I could ever imagine.
Well, that's great. Well, listen, Sandy Winkleman, thank you so much for joining us on the Science Fiction Prototyping Podcast, and we'd love to have you back.
Thanks for letting me be here.
I think Sandy really had a good point there at the end of our quick conversation around that the technology is getting to the point where it's no longer the limiting factor. I think that's one of the things that I see very, very prominently, that science and technology have really gotten to the point where the only constraints we have are the constraints we put on ourselves and our imagination, which is what science fiction prototyping can help with and what it really allows us to do. It allows us to play around with the future and play around with technology and imagining possible futures. And just like Sandy said, with the robot project, very soon there will be very few limitations around what a robot could look like or what a robot could do. Whereas today, where we're just at the very beginning, right? We just launched the physical side of this project only a year ago. We launched it at the Maker Faire in New York City back in 2013, and now we came back a year later with 2 robots in tow, or actually multiple robots, and friends for Jimmy in tow. So we really are at the beginnings of something that could be amazing. And as Sandy said, where we're going and where science fiction prototyping is going and where possibly the future of robotics is going is where anybody can imagine and design their own robot or multiple robots. That as the technology gets better and better, it really does go back to our imaginations. It really does go back to us challenging ourselves to imagine a far more awesome future than we have today, and far more awesome robots, if you will, than we have today. And I think that's really one of the main powers of the process. So I want to thank you for joining us at the Science Fiction Prototyping Podcast. As always, if you have any ideas for future columns or future podcasts, you can always get in touch with me at brian.david.johnson@intel.com. You can also follow me on Twitter. I'm at IntelFuturist. So if you have any ideas for, and if you want to share any of your own science fiction prototypes, if you want to share any work that you've seen, please reach out. I know we've been able to pull some of those in to columns over the past year, and I love getting your feedback, and I love getting your ideas. So if you have any, please send them my way. Also, I should note that the 21st Century Robot book is actually going to be coming out quite soon. Early in 2015, it will be coming out from Maker Media, the folks who put on Maker Faire and who do Make Magazine. They have been a partner of ours in this process with Sandy and myself and a lot of the other roboticists that we've been working with. So keep an eye out on that. We'll probably come back and maybe talk to my publisher, Brian Jepson, about that maybe in a future column. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be talking to you soon. Thanks.